Hi there. In this lecture we see a fascinating game of Bobby Fischer against Arthur Bisguier in 1963 New York State Open Round 6. This was actually one of the 3 games of the Italian game featured in Fischer's 60 Memorable Games book, and it certainly does have some memorable points to it. So e4 from Fischer, we go into the Italian game, the 2 knights defense. Knight g5 from Fischer, d5, e takes, the Palerio defense, knight a5. Bishop b5 check, c6, d takes c6, b takes c6. Now bishop e2 is played. It seems modern engines and more modern grandmasters like Nakamura prefer bishop d3 here. This is the modern engine choice. So bishop e2 should be absolutely fine for black after h6. We have an eccentric move though here, which comes from Steinitz. It's a Steinitz move, trying to tempt black to double the pawns at the expense of the light square bishop. So Steinitz actually had 4 games with this eccentric looking move, and other grandmasters like Nigel Short have taken an interest in this move as well. So it is a very interesting move compared to knight f3. It does have the advantage that the knight is not going to be so easily kicked later with e4. So in Steinitz's 4 games, he had 2 losses against Chigorin, 1 win against Chigorin, and 1 draw against Blackburn. Okay, so at least he did have 1 win with it as well. Bishop c5 is played. Now, if the immediate bishop takes h3, the concept is good here, actually. Well, at least interesting. Knight b7 would be minimizing the interest for white, though. This position is just an even position. If black goes ahead after doubling on h3 to play queen d7, which some might find tempting, in fact, what we can do here is just treat it as a gambit pawn with d3. We're going to end up with a superior pawn structure. We're already a pawn up. Let's say taking bishop f1 prevents queen g2. And here we've got a nice grip over the light squares. If we look at this position, queen f3, we're intensifying our light square grip. We can actually play bishop h3 as well here instead of bishop g2 with tempo. And we get a very nice looking position with a small edge here. With the bishop pair, superior pawn structure, it's equal on pawns. So we've counter-gambited a pawn to have a better kind of pawn structure overall. I know we've got isolated pawns here, but we have got the bishop pair. So that would be the test, with queen d7. But yeah, knight b7 is actually more accurate. But anyway, in the event of the game, we have bishop c5, which is also a good idea, good move. Both sides castle. Now, if black had played bishop takes h3 here, let's just check it here for a moment with queen d7. We can actually play, this is different, we can play bishop g4. And this position should be slightly in our favor. This position, even though we've lost the bishop pair, it's slightly in our favor here. We've got slightly better pieces ready to come out to central squares, some targets. Black's got some structural defects more than us. So okay, black castles, we have d3. And now black is tempted with bishop takes h3, g takes, queen d7, which is actually, even still echoing actually from earlier, this is actually an inaccuracy. Knight b7 does seem a way to go. Just centralize that knight as a high priority. Moving pieces to the center does make them kind of multi-purpose pieces, central pieces. This position, put the bishop on d4, black's even. But with the game queen d7, we have now bishop f3 just offering the h3 pawn. Queen takes h3, knight d2. So white's counter-gambited a pawn with a superior pawn structure. And we have now bishop g2, queen f5, slight inaccuracy, queen e6 is more or less equal, knight d5, knight f3. This position is about even. So queen f5 though was played. Now, here is where this configuration is a kind of downside in itself. What do you think is a really cool move for white here? Fischer actually played an inaccuracy So I want to rule that out for you. Fischer actually played queen e1. Can we do better? Yeah, we can actually. Rook b1 carries the b4 threat. And let's say bishop b6, b4. That knight pushed to b7. Then pounce on c6 and f5 with queen f3. So that's why queen f5 is asking for a bit of trouble. And let's say the queen's come off. Black's having to shield c6. This position, c4. And actually we end up winning a key pawn here. That's a nice pin against the knight. So that's a nice winning position. If we go back here and look at this again, if knight b7 had been played, queen f3 is again powerful. b4 here is actually possible. And this is annoying. If bishop d4, c4, and here black's getting into a spot of bother, the knights are in a spot of bother, but we're going to take out c6, and we've got this pawn majority on the queen side, so that's a big advantage. The bishop's going to really help past pawn potential there. But the thing is about b4, if bishop takes b4, then bishop takes d5 is just winning material. And knight takes b4, we have a3 just winning material. So yeah, this is quite problematic, this rook b1 move in a nutshell. So let's look at that again. If bishop b6, queen f3 is coming, first b4, then queen f3, targeting f3 and c6. Yeah, so c6 is like an issue in the black position. This is the critical line, which is just much better for white. So queen e1 though is not so hot, and the plan with it is not so great either. Although it is x-raying the knight, we have rook fe8, knight e4, which is hitting the knight now on a5. We have bishop b6. Now this is actually, there's some multi-purpose moves going on, because that actually means c5 is possible, which means the knight could centralize to become multi-purpose with knight c6 to d4. So yeah, not just parrying the threat of queen takes a5, but actually usefully, because black wants to play c5 in any case, so it's vacating c5. We have knight takes f6 check, queen takes, king h1, and now c5. So the big threat here, which can be prevented, is knight c6. It's kind of positional threat. We don't want to be content with slightly better pawn structure. We want better pieces as well. If this knight centralizes, it's not going to be that dim as it is on the rim right now. Knight on the rim is dim, as they say. Queen c3 doesn't help. Queen e4 would have prevented knight c6 with this battery on c6. Say rook d4, we can play queen f3, not mind the queen's coming off. And here we have b4 as a great resource, exploiting the fact that the knight hasn't got b7 or c6. So we end up with a better pawn structure here. It's an even position overall though. With queen c3, Fischer's in trouble here. The knight's coming to a beautiful square. It's like black's position looks absolutely marvellous. We have f4, knight d4. Black is clearly better here. Queen c4, queen g6. So if queen e6, we can take on e5 this position. Knight takes c2. This isn't good. Black's much better there. So yeah, that would be quite powerful, queen e6. Yeah, it's a very difficult position for white. So queen g6 though was played, c3, and now knight f5. In accuracy, black's only slightly better after this. The knight should have gone to c2, which basically all modern engines kind of agree with. So rook b1, e takes f4 is troublesome for white. The knight's got the escape knight e3 here. Now, if bishop e4, rook takes e4 is a powerful exchange sack. If we look at this position, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's just one pawn for the exchange. And you might think, why is this good for black? If we look at this with g5, it's a funny position here. Black's knight isn't that much in trouble here, because we have rook d1 check if rook f2 to start off with. If b3, rook d3, this position, knight can go to e3 then, And c4, if we take this scenario, this is just marvellous for black. That knight's a monster on e3. White's rooks are not coordinated. So yeah, this knight c2 does seem like an amazing exchange sack. If bishop e4 is nothing to worry about, rook takes e4. And yeah, this position, White's pieces are not doing too much here. So yeah, funny stuff. If instead of bishop e4 here, rook f2, yeah, as there's rook e1 check. And here, rook takes d3 is possible. White's pinned. If rook takes c2, then rook takes f1 is mate. Yeah, if bishop takes f4, rook takes d3. And here, let's say queen a4, rook e2 now threatens queen takes g2 mate. This position, queen e6, this is just much better for black as well. The knight's not trappable anytime soon. So anyway, the knight actually went to f5. We have f takes e5, which opens up the rook. Rook takes f5, bishop f4, rook e2. This is very dangerous, this position, with the threat of queen takes g2, checkmate. If knight d6 instead, this is also a way for black to play, and this is even, for example. This should be even, offering the exchange of queens there. But rook e2 was played. We have bishop e4, which is again a mistake by Fischer. For equality, it seems bishop f3 is the way to go. And let's say rook e7, now bishop e4, knight d6, and now this kind of exchange of queens leads to an even position. So that will be a safe way of playing things, but with bishop e4, this is asking for a bit of trouble here. But this is where Bisguier kind of fell asleep at the wheel, so to speak. What would you play here with black? This is the most precious piece in the white position. It's holding up defensively the g2 square. That's a clue. If this is the most precious piece, what do we want to try and do with the opponent's absolute best pieces? We want to try and eliminate them. What do you think the best move is? It's certainly not rook takes b2. Huge mistake. It's just trying to, if black tried to eliminate with rook takes e4 being threatened, for queen g2 if d takes, mating. A4 just to show the threat. This is just a mate. So yeah, what would white actually do? If bishop f3, there's knight e3. So you might wonder, what does white do here? Bishop takes, there's queen g2 now, checkmate, supported by the knight. Yeah, this is horrendous. If bishop takes e3, what would you play here for black for 100 points? What's the most crushing move? This is a fascinating position with this g2 pressure. Black can leverage the g2 pressure with rook 8 takes a3, offering an exchange sack. The threat is rook takes f3 after rook takes queen g2 checkmate. Let's say bishop takes e2, rook takes e2. You might think, well, white can defend this Kingscrusher with rook g1. Also, if queen d5 trying to defend g2, black has bishop c7. And this is just too vicious on h2. It's very difficult for white to defend here. So yes, rook g1. What's the snag here? What does black play here for 10 points? Yeah, queen c6 check. Rook g2, queen takes g2 is checkmate. So white's not left with much. Queen e4, we just take the queen and we're much better. Yeah, this is a fascinating line where actually, yeah, if bishop takes e3, rook 8 takes e3 is strongest. If bishop d5, with these rooks looking at white's king, what can you see that black can do for here? There's a great move here. Rook takes h2, just removes all white's king safety. Bishop c7 check. And if king h1, rook h3 is checkmate. if instead rook f4 here, queen g3 check, and rook e2, not even bothering the rook, this is horrendous for white. White's in huge trouble getting mated soon. So yeah, this line, in fact, the rook on 8 takes on e3, not the rook on 2 taking on e3. That's just an equal position, likely to be a slight advantage for white. For example, here is a slight advantage for white. So yeah, fascinating stuff, how bishop takes e3. There's rook 8 takes e3 here. Okay. So on knight e3, if bishop takes e2 is queen g2 checkmate. If bishop e4, then actually, can you see what black plays here? Yeah, rook takes e4. I mean, the knight's hitting the queen anyway. Queen takes e4, d takes, knight takes f1, and then rook takes b2 is better for black. So black's a pawn up here. This is nice for black. If bishop d5 here, rook 8 to e7, and just black is just sitting much better with the coordinated rooks protecting each other with lots of ideas on the horizon. If rook g1, this is a funny one. Queen h5, and now black is threatening again rook takes to go into f3 if d takes. So let's say white controls the f3 square, but then knight e3, and here the bishop is tied down to h2 here. So yes, if bishop takes, queen takes h2 as checkmate. If queen b5, this is really unpleasant. Rook e7, just defending the rook for a moment. Let white deal with all the threats now, if possible. Bishop f3, queen h4. And black's going to be, it's too much pressure on the white position here of the queen h4. The knight is hitting the rook as well. It's not just the threat of queen takes f4, it's the threat of knight takes f1. So this is overwhelming. If bishop takes, knight takes f1, rook takes f1, rook takes e2. But the thing is also, if bishop takes f1, queen takes f4. This is just better for black, this position. There's king safety issues for white here. So anyway, yeah. So rook e8 would have been the absolute key move in a nutshell, just to try and knock out this key defensive piece. But rook takes b2. Now, actually, it's Fischer's turn with the multi-purpose moves. This is a huge, powerful, super-duper multi-purpose move that's played here. For 200 points, what would you play in this position? Very simple and strong. It's bishop e5. So actually, look at that pinned knight. It's just unveiled an attack here. It's got pressure on g7 as well. Yeah, if only this rook had controlled e5 here, this wouldn't even. It's not a move here, is it? Bishop e5. Black could just take on e5. So there's no problem with this. But yeah, this is a gigantic mistake to allow bishop e5, which keeps protection of h2 nice and central. It's attacking g7. It's unveiled this attack on f5 two ways. So yeah, white's clearly winning here. Rook e8 is played. If rook g1 had been played instead, queen h5, this position, let's take this position. There is knight e3, trying to deflect the bishop away from h2. So yes, that'll be checkmate. So this is, it's not as good. If bishop g6, that is a resource, but black ends up with a clear advantage here. With queen a6, yeah, black just takes on f1. And this position, there's nice tactics. Rook takes h2 check. Bishop c7 forces basically rook g2, but then bishop takes h2. Black's going to end up winning here. a quick way to win is like this. So anyway, yeah, so rook g1 is actually very inferior. The rook sitting on f1 wants to put pressure on f5. It's a really super logical move. Yeah, it's turned the tables. That's why this is so memorable. So yeah, this is a super memorable game because it's full of these ups and downs. It makes the games colourful, as Mikhail Tal would say. Very, very colourful game. So if black had tried queen h5 here instead, we can actually just, in this position, just take on f5 with the bishop, or even with the rook. There's no penalty on either here. So rook e8 is played, rook takes f5, and here is where the game ended. In this situation, with the queen sitting on g6, by the way, rook takes f5 is a great idea. What would be a terrible idea for minus 1,000 points in this position? Yeah, bishop takes f5 has a weakness of the last move. It does neglect g2. Black would just pounce him with queen g2 checkmate. So rook takes f5. And now rook takes e5 is played, which doesn't really do anything. It doesn't really do anything. White's got some very powerful threats actually here as well. I just want to show you a token move. If a5, I mean black's material down, we have rook takes f7 even, hitting the queen. If queen takes bishop d5, nasty pin. Yeah, we're going to be scooping up the queen soon. So anyway, rook takes e5 tried, it's hopeless. Rook takes e5, and this ends the game. Black resigned here. Bisguier resigned. If rook takes h2 check, queen d6, well, we are a rook up, d4. This is one way of playing it. Queen c8 check. And here, for example, king g2, if queen takes e5, queen takes d8 check, and queen takes e8 is mate. So anyway, yeah, it's a funny game. We see various issues and downsides of the black position in this variation. This configuration with the knight, yeah, allowing it to centralize, that was great. It shouldn't have been permitted in this variation. There were opportunities to try and permit that centralizing plan. And it was centralizing pieces which played a major role. But yeah, this greedy move is a very kind of iconic blunder, basically, in Fischer memorable games. It's one of the more absolutely iconic blunders. This rook's nicely coordinating with the queen on potential killer common square. This is the absolute best hero piece of the position. It should have been taken out with rook e8. If we forget every detail of every variation in this game, apart from this idea of taking out a key defensive piece, then that, you know, that's the minimal thing we can get from this game. Okay, the eccentric knight h3 from a theoretical perspective from Steinitz is a very, very interesting idea. It's a very, very interesting idea to be aware of. This could be a major surprise weapon for you. And yeah, grandmasters like Nigel Short, I believe, have played this. Okay, on occasion. Okay, very interesting stuff. Thanks very much. Hi there. I hope you enjoyed that game sample. It's actually from my course, which you can find at the Kingscrusher TV page, which has great discounts. It's the Italian game Mastery, the Ideal Beginner's Opening. So just very briefly, if we click there, you can also see other free sample videos. Just do expand all sections, and you can see these preview links if you want to see other free previews and get an idea of the course yourself. I'm going to keep it short here. Just basically to say I had a fantastic time seeing many, many brilliant games in the Italian game. You can see from the number of collections how epic some of these games are, that they've been collected like hundreds of times at chessgames.com. And yeah, I really hope you check out this index and may consider getting the course. Okay. Comments, questions, likes, shares appreciated. Thanks very much.